Hello YouTube world, Mac Daddy 1911A1 here in front of my latest creation. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the hit pit. This is my own personal gun range I've just constructed. It's just basically a backstop because I have neighbors in the immediate area around my home. I wanted to make damn sure that if I'm out here shooting, no one gets hurt, period. Probably a little bit crazy. Most people would think it'd be a little crazy of exactly how I constructed this thing, but I don't much give a damn what anybody else thinks. I always have been that way. It always will be that way. I just don't care. What I care about is what I believe in. The idea behind it is to make a vertical backstop where there's no ricochets that would go up and over this big tall hill here and possibly hit one of my neighbors on the other side, because there's quite a few of them over that way. And we all know, if you'll read the back side of any 22 ammunition package, it'll say this round will travel up to 2 miles. I don't know how far a 45 will fly or a 40 cal, but I would imagine pretty much in the same range. So the biggest thing for me was to make it safe. Okay, I hear a lot of idiots out there, they're just shooting into the damn woods and they're going to eventually hurt or kill somebody. And this day and age, with the government doing the stupid shit they're doing and stupid people doing the stupid crap they're doing, it's just making it worse and worse on all us who try to make a difference and try to be a voice of reason out there in all the madness. So I'm going to go through a little bit. First things first, I want you to notice it says the hit pit, dedicated to the memory of and with deepest respect for La Maestro, Colonel Jeff Cooper. Now, if you've been in handguns or rifles any length of time, have enjoyed the sports at all, you'll probably know who Colonel Jeff Cooper was. Now, Colonel Cooper was a World War II Marine Corps veteran, a Korean veteran. He was at one time, for a short period of time, a race car driver. He was a mercenary. He is also the man who helped develop the modern technique of handgun, defensive handgun use. And he also is one of the very first people who started his own private school to teach citizens, law enforcement, and military the use of firearms, not simply the handgun, but also firearms. We also know that he was the greatest proponent of the 1911 semi-automatic firearm, same one I'm carrying on my hip, as well as the 45 ACP cartridge for its man-stopping, fight-stopping abilities. And of course the wind's going to pick up while I'm trying to do this. Maybe I can edit that out. Unfortunately, recently Kim lost her mom, and as such she got a lot of her stuff, including a brand new computer we had bought her about 2 years ago, and I'm using it now to do editing and all, and it is vastly superior to the ancient one I had. Onward and upward. Mr. Cooper, Colonel Jeff Cooper, he retired out of the Marine Corps and had in the 50s the leather slap series of gun shooting events where folks would draw out of a leather holster in the early matches with a Colt Peacemaker, and they thought they were doing really, really good. And then along came Deputy Sheriff. Let me zoom this out and I'll get my train of thought back. I apologize for that, ladies and gentlemen. Jack Weaver, Deputy Sheriff Jack Weaver. And I believe he was in the Los Angeles, whatever that county is, Sheriff's Department. But regardless, he came along with his two-handed stance that is named after him, the Weaver stance, and revolutionized the way handguns were shot from that point on. Did not take Colonel Cooper or the other folks that began in this series very long to see that if you wanted any chance at all to beat Jack Weaver in a contest, you better adopt his technique, because it was by and far a much superior technique versus what they had been doing up to that point. Jack Weaver never went over to the automatic because his police department, sheriff's department, they all had a .38 special revolvers. Now I'm not sure in his later life, because he just passed away here in the last year or so, I believe. But I believe he always had a 38 revolver, and that's what he was issued with at the department he worked for. Therefore, that is what he shot with, and he practiced with, and he used, and he was very, very skilled at it. But Jack Weaver, Colonel Jeff Cooper, his baby, he believed was in 1911, which originally was a Colt 1911. That's all he carried. That's what he believed in, that's what he preached in, and he did a lot of very extensive testing in the early days, in the 50s and 60s, and even into the early 70s, trying to find out what the best semi-automatic handgun, or the best handgun really, would be. And he came up with the conclusion that the 1911 A1 was the best of the best. Now, of course, since he founded that opinion, we've had a lot of new introductions in the marketplace, such as the Glocks and all the clones that came after it. You've got the 1911 and all the clones that came after it. They're named 1911. You've got all the Glocks, the Glock and all its clones. You've got all the polymer framed handguns out there of the modern day. And maybe in some ways they are superior, maybe they are not. I'm not going to argue that point here. If you carry a handgun for personal defense, you trust it, you rely on it, more power to you. Just don't try shoving your viewpoint down my throat, and I won't try shoving my 45 up your ass. Anywho, back to the video at hand. The hit pit I built using a bunch of scrap lumber from my brother, the Poo Guru. I think he also has a channel here on YouTube. He had a workshop that I had purchased for him. And he ended up having to pay off, but I purchased it for him, and we had a tornado here a couple of years ago. A couple of trees fell, and they crushed one side of that shop and part of the roof. Well, I took the rest of it apart, and piece by piece I brought it home and stacked it in a big pile. I still got quite a bit of it, but all the materials here, I didn't pay a damn penny for it. We already had it all on hand. But like I said, the idea behind the hit pit is to stop any rounds from going up and over the hill and hurting anyone. That's the biggest thing. I don't want to hurt anyone. I want to practice safely. I really didn't have a really good location to put this thing, and the range at this time on this side of the wire is about 6 long steps. Okay, so you're looking at maybe 6 yards, maybe. But it's adequate, because most personal defense situations, self-defense situations, will be immediately in your face. You know, if you see them way the hell over there, then that gives you time. You can also run. And in most states, you better run, because you can't just shoot somebody way the hell over yonder. So the point of the short range for the handgun is to time it to get the draw out and get the shot off, so forth. But I dug out the hill behind where it sits at, and I built a framework of plywood and big oak 4x4s that I had off my truck, and I built a partition in the back, and the partition separates the rear 2 feet of it from the rest of the building, and it is filled up with dirt 8 feet high, and it's settled, and I filled it up again, it settled, and I filled up again, and it settled just a little bit since. But it pretty much, at the very rear of it, there's 8-foot partition, and behind it is, or in between it and the rear wall, is 8 feet of dirt. It's 8 feet high, 2 feet thick. Okay? In front of that partition, there's more dirt piled up. In front of that dirt are compressed pine straw bales that I made. Okay? I use my little single axle utility trailer like you see anywhere, the little dump trailer that you can buy to pull around behind your lawnmower. And I built a press, and it's hand operated. You pile of straw in there on top of your string you've already cut, and you pull down on this big old long handle, and you compress it as tightly as you can get it, and then you tie them strings up. You got a huge bale about 2.5 feet thick, 2.5 feet wide, and about 3.5 feet long. And I stacked them on in right here in the front, and that's to slow the bullet down, and eventually it hits the dirt before it hits that partition. Now I'm not quite finished, but damn it, I've been working on this sucker since September on my days off, and when I just had enough energy to do it. And that's a lot of damn digging to do without a freaking fork, a backhoe or a front end loader or something of that nature. And I mean to tell you, I've hauled load after load after load after load of dirt up in here and thrown it up in that sucker. Of course I used the dirt that I dug out, but it was not nearly enough to fill it in, and so therefore I took the press off the utility trailer and I'd move it down. I'd dig and fill it up, bring it over here, shovel it out, throw it up in there. But the whole purpose, like I have said, is to be as safe as possible. It could be freestanding in your yard, and you can fill it all the way up with dirt, partition it off, fill it up with dirt, and then throw in a bunch of bales and maybe put some string or something up there to hold it in. Maybe someone out there wants a backstop. They live out in the county, so they can discharge a firearm safely without getting any problems, but they don't have an adequate backstop. Well, build your own. There ain't no excuse for it. Get off your ass, buy you a shovel, get you a good pick, what I commonly call a grubbing hoe. It's it's got a little wide spade that's maybe that long, and then it's got a pick on the other end, and you can bust that dirt up, and then you can just shovel it right into whatever you're going to haul it with. I move wheelbarrow load after wheelbarrow load along with that little utility trailer doing this. So you can too. There's no excuse for it. If you want something bad enough, do it. This is going to be part one, basically, of the Hit Pit series. The second part's going to be dealing with handguns and the principles Jeff Cooper set forth. I think I'll dismount the camera from the tripod, and I'll give you a little close-up look of how I've done it. So give me just a second. I cannot pause this camera, and it's a pain in the neck. I'm not sure about the how it's going to work on the editing program, so I won't pause it. This is some carpet that I got out of a house that I did some demolition work in, and they gave it away, and I still got a bunch more of it. And it's easy to attach targets to, using little hooks like women use for the drapes. Okay, that's just for hanging curtains and all on the curtain rods. And you can see right through there, it's perforated it up, but it's plenty serviceable. Like I said earlier, behind it we've got the compressed pine straw bales. Behind that you've got the dirt over there, and then you got the partition wall. Now I haven't finished it. I still got to fill that up to maybe the 6-foot point. We'll go around here, and I've got some steps dug into the side of the hill. And at the very back, this is where the partition wall starts. And let me get the camera in there. You can see there's the big piece of big timber. And there's the back side of the wall. And there's all that dirt. Brother, you talking about some work now to shovel all that in there. And then the other side of the partition, you've got the front side of that wall, and it's just plywood I got off my brother's building. And then down there's the dirt holding it, keep it from bowing out any further. And then back here, I started digging out. Let me get my thing zoomed out. At the back of the hill, so we'd have another flat surface for it to strike if for some reason it went all the way through, which I seriously doubt that is ever going to happen. And I stopped short because we got a little den here of some kind. I have not seen any tracks in or out of that thing during this summer or up to this point. So I think it's been abandoned well before I started digging, but I didn't want to dig into a den with some animal right here at the winter time and run them off and not have a place to survive the winter. So I've left it alone, but when spring gets here, I'm gonna go ahead and cut it on out over in here so that I've got another flat area for any rounds that may go through to strike. And I mean, we are above it here looking over the roof, and there's dirt all the way up through there. And people are gonna say, well, it's gonna rot. I don't care. It'll take years to rot this stuff down. what I care about is right now immediately protecting my neighbors, myself, you know, from being hurt by a stray round. And so that's the interior of the hip pit. That's how I got it laid out, and I want to be safe as I possibly can. But I mean, this, you know, this land here is useless to us. It's just grown over. It's hillside, and you've got the damn power line above it, and there's nothing else we can do with it. And I didn't want to just shoot into the hillside. I wanted to, like I said, protect my neighbors and myself from litigation, whatever the case may be. But anywho, I'll go ahead and conclude this video and say this is Mac Daddy 1911A1 with the Shade Tree Survivalist. Going to do a, well, anyway, this is Mac Daddy 1911A1 with the Shade Tree Survivalist. Thank you very much for watching. Y'all have a good day.